The motocross season is now done and dusted. As the focus naturally shifts to the playoffs, one thing that's in the back of everyone's minds is what's going to happen next year. Most riders' contracts are through the end of the playoffs, which means if your contract expires this year, you essentially have 3 more races under your current contract. And with that being said, we have quite a bit of movement coming up into 2026. A lot of what we thought we knew seems to be up in the air at this point. So what I'm going to do is go through team by team and tell you guys what we do know, what the rumors are, and also speculate a little bit. Alright, kicking off things with Team Honda. Originally, it was rumored that Jo Shimoda may be leaving the team after some drama with the agents and the whole Wasserman-Lucas Myrtle deal. It sounds like that's all been smoothed out. I would love to know the inner workings of those meetings and talks, because things were looking a little bit rough there for a bit. Unfortunately, Chance Hymas's career has been riddled with ACL injuries so far. He definitely has a lot of potential, but I also think that Team Honda knows what they have with Jo Shimoda, and they really don't want to lose that either. So either way, expect Jo Shimoda to come back next season, and I believe Chance Hymas hit some sort of requirement in 2024 in his contract, which extended him essentially through 2026, so thankfully he should be secure as he heads into next season. He is on a much better timetable going into next season while recovering from this ACL when compared to last year. Remember, he ended up damaging his knee in the playoffs, and he was still able to line up for Supercross. This time he tore his quote-unquote good knee, and he did it several months earlier. So while you never like to see that, when compared directly to last year, maybe he could be in a better situation. As far as the 450 side, Jet Lawrence supposedly signed a record-breaking contract. It is believed to be a 5-year contract worth about $20 million. Of course, we'll never know for sure. But one thing we do know for sure is that Jet will be racing with Team Honda next year, as well as his brother Hunter. The numbers behind his contract are a little bit less clear, but we don't believe those two are going to be going anywhere anytime soon. Looking at the KTM team, they recently extended Aaron Plessinger for another year, so he's going to be good for 2026. I believe Julian Beaumer is still essentially on his rookie contract. I think they extended him somehow, whether he met some sort of threshold or whatever the case may be. I believe he'll be going into his final year as far as that contract goes in 2026, but either way, he is returning for the team as well. And then we should be getting some news in the next month or so that Eli Tomac is signing with the team for 2026, supposedly a 2-year deal, which would be kind of crazy since they only offered Aaron Plessinger a 1-year deal. But either way, look for Tomac in orange in 2026. And then originally it was believed that Tom Vialle was going to race the 3rd 450 on the team, and it would be a 3-rider 450 team with just Julian down on the 250s. But now it would seem that Tom Vialle is likely going to head to Honda HRC for the European Series and go back to MXGP. It sounds like he's even slated to do some off-season Supercross racing on a Honda. And looking at his final race of the motocross series, he essentially just didn't want to race. He said his bike wasn't feeling that good. We saw him fade pretty bad in Moto 1, and then he just was unwilling to line up for Moto 2. It didn't get talked about that much on the broadcast, but Ian Harrison did release a statement that essentially said Tom didn't like his bike, he didn't want to race, so he didn't. I'm not even sure if we're going to see him for SMX. I would have to imagine that he would line up just based off of the money, but things are definitely getting kind of shaky over there. So there's likely going to be a 250 spot open up here. We're going to talk about that as we go on throughout the video. There are several likely candidates, but nobody really confirmed, obviously, at this point. And then if you haven't already picked up on it, which I'm sure pretty much everybody has, Chase Sexton is leaving the team. He'll be going to Kawasaki. We'll get more into that once we get to Kawasaki. But first I want to tackle the absolute juggernaut of a list of a team, which is Star Racing. I'm not even going to go over every single person because it would just be massive. But what we do know is that Pierce Brown, Max Anstey, and Nate Thrasher all have deals through 2026. Those guys are not going anywhere. And then as far as Cole Davies, I believe he's actually signed through 2027. So we already have 4 250 guys locked in. Then of course we have Hayden Deegan, who will be starting out the season on the 250 team while pitting out of the 450 rig. It sounds like he's going to be able to get his own gear deal as he's transitioning to the 450 class. So don't look for him to be running the typical Thor gear. He'll likely be wearing Fox next season. Then of course we got to talk about the 2 Cadens on the team. Caden Banier, the Australian, came out and looked pretty good this year. He did end up tearing his UCL and having to have thumb surgery. He was only able to do a couple of races for the team and really no red flags with him, so it's hard to imagine that they wouldn't bring him back, but at the same time, I can't confirm that he's coming back either. As far as Caden Dudney, he made his pro debut at Unadilla, looked really good. A top 5 overall was briefly in play until he ended up crashing in Moto2, and then he was solid at Budds Creek where he got a 14th. He had one of the better pro motocross debuts that we've seen in recent history, in my opinion, so I'm sure that Bobby would love to bring him back. Again, I cannot confirm that, but assuming that we bring the Cadens back, I would have to imagine that one or both of them are probably going to be on a Supercross Futures or SMX Next type of contract, because there's just not that many pro slots available right now. Remember, a lot of the pro guys in motocross were all out with injuries, and one of those people that was out most of the year with injuries, mainly concussions, was Daxton Bennick. Do not look for him to be returning to the team next year. He finally returned to the motocross series at Ironman, where he was only able to bring home a 28th overall. Then he moved up to 22nd by Unadilla, and finally in Budds Creek he was able to bring home a 12th. He did come out swinging pretty nicely for Supercross, but at the end of the day, we've only ever seen him have a couple of really good rides in his whole pro career. So with how full this team is, he's not going to be returning. He will likely be going over to the KTM group, probably under the Rockstar team. We'll talk more about him once we get to the Rockstar team. One other rider that we could see return to the team, but is really a big question mark at this point, especially after he suffered a pretty gnarly crash at the end of the motocross season, is going to be Michael Moseman. He honestly had a really solid season going. I'm not sure if he's going to return for SMX or not. We saw him get podiums in Supercross and motocross. A few weeks ago, I would have thought for sure that he was going to be returning to the team. At this point, I really don't know. What I do know is that multiple times Bobby has told him to just retire, but I also know that Michael really doesn't want to leave the team. He's comfortable where he's at, both on the bike and geographically speaking. So if for some reason he can't strike up a deal with Star Yamaha, look for him to potentially try to move over to Quadlock Honda. Geographically speaking, they operate out of a similar area, so that would be relatively easy on him. And while it's not a factory team, it's still a pretty high level team. We've seen them have a lot of success, and I'm sure if Star doesn't want Michael, they would love to have him. And of course, Star is going after all kinds of riders in the amateur ranks, poaching them left and right. The one I'm going to mention here is going to be Landon Gordon. It sounds like he's going to be on the team. Not really sure what capacity he's going to be in. We saw him race SMX Next throughout the season. He's looked good at times, and the timetable would seem to be leading him towards going pro, but I'm not really sure that they even have room on the team for him to go pro next year, so something to keep an eye on there. Maybe he could fill in if riders get injured, or maybe they'll just run like 8 pro riders next year. And then as far as the 450 side, Christian Craig is still on a Supercross only deal. Cooper Webb and Justin Cooper will both be back with the team next year alongside Hayden Deegan as he moves into the 450 class. Moving on to Pro Circuit Kawasaki, man, things were looking pretty locked in for a minute there, and now it just all got spicy again. As I'm trying to make this video for you guys, reports are already starting to come out of Jorge Prado going to KTM for 2026. This was already a rumor we were going to discuss, and as of right now, nothing official has come out from either team, but it's looking like less and less of a rumor and more like what's going to happen. So starting off with the guys that we know are locked in, Seth Hamaker, Cameron McAdoo, they're both going into their second of a 2-year deal, so they are both going to be there through 2026. Drew Adams, I believe, is actually signed through 2027. He's not going to go anywhere. Levi Kitchen re-signed a new contract this year, which is 2 years, I believe, so he'll be good through 2027. So that's already 4 riders. And then we have Garrett Marchbanks, who did re-sign with the team very recently, and he actually has some verbiage in his contract that would allow him to go up to the 450. Garrett definitely seems like somebody who would be successful in the 450 class. We saw him race for Club MX on the 450. He looked really good doing that, and we all know he's a bigger guy. And then the 6th rider on the team is Ty Masterpool. I believe he signed a 1-year deal with a 1-year option after that, so he would be coming up on his 1-year option. Unfortunately, this year has gone pretty rough for him compared to last year. It sounds like that relationship with the team has deteriorated quite a bit, so I don't know that they're going to bring him back, but they definitely have an option to. We've never really seen them be a 6-man team in the past. Remember, they came into this season with a 5-rider team, and Drew Adams was essentially an alternate, and even though the riders were dropping like flies at the beginning of the season, they still were hesitant to bring Drew up into the pro ranks until they finally did about halfway into Supercross. So keeping in mind they already have 5 guys locked in, I'm really not sure that we're going to see Ty Masterpool back. But what if one of those 5 guys is actually just going to go right into the 450 class? That would actually open up a slot for Ty Masterpool. Again, I don't know that Mitch even would care to bring him back. I'm not that in the loop on that relationship. I know Ty would love to be back. We're going to have to see how he does in the SMX playoffs. Maybe he can prove something. There's a lot of moving parts right now, just strictly based off of Jorge Prado and the absolute temper tantrum that he seems to be throwing. He's actually on a 3-year deal, and I think it actually has another option year after the 3 years. But at this point, I don't expect any of those to come into play. We saw him try to not qualify for the motos at the final round of Pro Motocross. Unfortunately for Jorge, he was still forced onto the gate from that provisional rule. And then we saw him rip 2 really good starts and essentially just pull the ripcord and cruise around out there. Then he posted some pretty spicy Instagram posts saying essentially, this team sucks and I want to be back where I belong. I have never seen anything like this in motocross. Absolutely wild. I don't know why any team would want to take him on at this point. He definitely seems like a liability from a sponsorship point of view, but maybe somebody just can't resist the potential upside of his potential. I don't know. There are rumors of him going back to KTM, which would fill that Tom Vialle spot, and that would essentially put it back to 3 450s. Not really sure if that's going to happen. If I'm KTM, I'm looking at this situation like, do I really want this headache? Anyways, what I'm trying to say, if Jorge Prado moves on, I would expect that they probably bump Garrett Marchbanks up to the 450 class, and then technically that would make enough room for Ty Masterpool to stay with the team if they want him, but they really don't need him. If Prado does leave and they don't move Marchbanks up, the only other option that I see happening right now, which is kind of out of left field, we know that Joey Savacci has had a good relationship in the past. He's been a fill-in rider for the team before and done pretty well. He's also done really well this season other than having an injury in motocross. So I think it'd be pretty cool to see Joey get another shot on a factory team, whether that's factory Kawasaki or maybe he tries to go to the 450 Triumph team. Things didn't exactly end well when he was on the 250 team, but there is a relationship there as well. Both of those things pretty unlikely to happen though. And then of course, to cap off the 450 team, we have now Chase Sexton joining the team. So likely Prado and Anderson both out. Well, Anderson's definitely out. We don't really know what the heck is going on with Prado. So it's either going to be Prado and Sexton or Sexton and somebody else. And then you'll have Hammaker, McAdoo, Adams, Marchbanks, and Kitchen, maybe Masterpool. Don't forget that Team Green does have Enzo Timmerman waiting. He could end up in a similar situation to what Drew Adams had last year. Not really sure what's going on with him. He might get poached by Star Yamaha. You never know. Anyways, to pull things back together here, let's move on to the Rockstar team. That's going to be the Gas and Husqvarna conglomerate. It's going to be downsizing to one team more than likely next year. So right now on the team, we have Malcolm Stewart, RJ Hampshire, Casey Cochran, Ryder DeFrancisco, and of course Landon Gibson, who we saw make his pro debut very recently. Malcolm did actually get an offer from Triumph to go over there and race the 450 for them. Sounds like he actually is going to opt to stay with Rockstar, Husqvarna / Gas. And that actually worked out really good for them because it sounds like the Rockstar sponsorship is really tied with Malcolm. They want to be wherever Malcolm goes. So Triumph actually almost potentially had Rockstar as a title sponsor. But anyways, moving into 2026, RJ Hampshire and Malcolm Stewart will be representing that team in the 450 class. On the 250 side of things, we have 4 potential riders to look at. Obviously, we have the current riders, Ryder DeFrancisco and Casey Cochran. Ryder DeFrancisco, pretty much he's returning. That's essentially confirmed. Casey Cochran is much more of a question mark because Daxton Bennick is looking to join the team as well. I really don't expect them to try to field more than 2 250 riders. So if Ryder D ends up staying on the Rockstar team, then look for it to likely just be Ryder DeFrancisco and Daxton Bennick. However, if that KTM slot does not get filled by Jorge Prado, I would not be surprised if they end up moving Ryder D over to the KTM side to be teammates with Julian Beaumer, and then maybe they bring Casey Cochran back for one more year to go alongside Daxton Bennick. Unfortunately, Landon Gibson did have a pretty rough pro debut. He was unable to qualify for the motos in his pro debut at Unadilla. Thankfully, he did bounce back pretty strong at the final round in Budds Creek. He was only able to bring home a 23rd in Moto 1, but considering he didn't even make it into the top 40 at the first race, still quite an improvement, and then he scored points, finishing in 14th in Moto 2. Still not an ideal debut, but if you build a trajectory of outside the motos to 14th, that's actually a pretty good trajectory leading into next year. I wouldn't be surprised if the team decides to keep him down in SMX next to start the season, to try to help him keep building, and essentially to just keep him on the team because they'll likely have 2 or 3 other pros already in the 250 class. So in summary, the Rockstar team, Hampshire and Stewart locked in on the 450 class, Ryder D pretty much locked in, Bennick pretty much locked in, Cochran and Gibson are more question marks right now, but I would not be surprised to see all 4 of those 250 guys on the team together in some capacity. Moving on to the Triumph team, remember they are actually starting their 450 effort this season, and they did actually go after Malcolm Stewart to try to get him to represent them on the 450 class. I'm not really sure whether that was just because they thought that he would be a good guy that could potentially go after podiums for them, or if it was because they wanted to keep their other rider that they were looking at moving up down in the 250 class. What I mean by that is they were also looking at moving Jordan Smith into the 450 class, but he also won them their first ever 250 Supercross race, so I'm sure they would like to keep him down in the 250s, not only to contend for more race wins, but maybe go after a championship this year. That being said, they were not able to secure Stewart, so it would seem that they're probably in a position where they need to move up Jordan Smith, and they actually have Styles Robertson on a multi-year deal. Unfortunately, he was only able to score a couple of points this whole year, and he did try to race the full season. Unfortunately, that wrist that he's been dealing with, he's had like 9 surgeries on it now. Just not going to work for him as far as professional racing. Really hate to see that for Styles. He definitely gave it his best shot. So now the team is already down 2 of their 250 riders. They extended Jalek Swoll this year, so he'll be back with the team. And then Austin Faulkner actually has a deal with the team through 2027. So look for Jordan Smith to be on the 450s. And then you'll have Jalek Swoll and Austin Faulkner likely racing on opposite coasts. Whether they opt to have Mikkel Harup stay here in America or send him back to the GPs remains to be seen. We saw him be extremely successful in pro motocross. Unfortunately, he did go down and break his collarbone at the end of the season. But even with that, he still slightly outscored Austin Faulkner, who raced the entire Supercross season and the entire motocross season. And he actually had a couple of pretty good motocross results. Nonetheless, Harup was actually higher in SMX seeding going into the playoffs. And that's not a knock against Austin, he's rebuilding right now, but what I'm trying to say is that Triumph America probably has to feel like they have a real value with Harup, and they're probably going to want to hold on to him. But that doesn't really help Triumph Europe. They still have a 450 slot to fill, so definitely something to keep an eye on there. And keeping in mind that they did have a 4-man team this year, and now they're down to either 2 or 3. Maybe there's another free agent pickup that they get throughout the season. No real rumors there yet, though, so we're just going to have to keep our ear to the ground on that. Moving on to the HEP Progressive Suzuki team. Listening to Ken Roczen talking to some of the press when he returned for motocross round in Unadilla, he essentially said, "Yeah, we're still working on the final details. I don't expect to go anywhere else, but nothing's actually signed yet."
Just gotten my offer a couple days ago, so we'll go from there. I still haven't signed anything. I have a very good idea that you never know, but I will most likely stay with my current team. I've been really happy with that.
So expect for Ken Roczen to be back next year. I don't really know where else he would go, but at the same time, it's not necessarily official yet. It sounds like there's a really good chance that they're going to be picking up Jason Anderson. Remember, Anderson is no longer with the Kawasaki team. I believe he's actually slated to race World Supercross, so that could be pretty interesting. This team has generally had 3 450 guys on it, so maybe we see Colt Nichols return next year, but that is not confirmed as far as I know. That being said, we've never seen them field 2 more premier top 10 guys like this, so I wouldn't be surprised if they just opt to only have Roczen and Anderson. We could see Colt Nichols in a similar situation to what we saw Shane McElrath in 2024, where he just was a main event guy, rode solid all year, and then was just no longer on the team the next year. They also did go out and pick up Benoit Patrel for motocross, and he actually came out really strong at the beginning of the season. He was a top 10 guy, and as the season has worn on, he's really started to not look so good. I think this is one of those things that was fun while it lasted, but I believe that they're not going to be bringing him back either. So speculatively, look for Ken Roczen and Jason Anderson to be on the team next year. They are essentially going to drop Kyle Chisholm. He retired. Colt Nichols could be dropped. And then, of course, Benoit Patrel is likely not going to return either. Moving on to the newly formed Ducati factory racing team. This is pretty exciting. It's great to have an Italian brand join the ranks. So they're going to be a Troy Lee team. The obvious choice there would be Justin Barcia. He's been a Troy Lee guy for years now. He's likely going to be with the team. When he's commented on the whole situation, it's pretty much, yeah, we all know where I want to go. We're still finalizing things, nothing's signed yet. But expect Justin Barcia to be on that team, likely joined by Dylan Ferrandis. Now for me, this kind of came out of left field. This was not something I was expecting, and these guys don't really get along well. A lot of people don't get along with Barcia, but Ferrandis and Barcia specifically have had multiple run-ins, so this could be a lot of fun. I would love to see Ferrandis back on a factory ride. Not really much more to say. Ferrandis and Barcia on Ducati 2026. And then of course we have Team Beta. They actually had a pretty solid year with Mitch Oldenburg and Benny Bloss. They extended both of those guys around the same time. I think it took Oldenburg like another 2 weeks to get his deal when compared to Bloss. But nonetheless, they were both extended through Supercross. We also saw them field a few other people in motocross, but essentially they really didn't race hardly any pro motocross, and that actually ended up costing the riders because they were not able to stay in the top 20 in SMX seating, so they're both going to be in the LCQs. But nonetheless, look for Bloss and Oldenburg to return for Beta next year. And of course, there's a whole slew of non-factory teams that are all really great teams that have really cool, really good riders. But the only one we're going to talk about today is going to be Club MX. There's actually some pretty interesting moving going on with Club MX. They did send a formal offer to Justin Barcia. However, he took too long to respond, so they rescinded that offer. Cody Schock is going into his second of a 3-year deal, so he's actually good through 2027. I would expect him to likely go after the 450 class full-time after Pro Motocross this year. We saw him dabble in the 450 Supercross class in Daytona, where he actually was pretty strong in his first ever 450 race. He just jumped on a 450 right in the middle of the 250 season and then went right back to 250s. And I know he does have a goal of getting a career number, so he's really only going to be able to do that if he just picks one class and sticks to it. He tried the 250 motocross class last year. That did not go well. 450 motocross went much better this year. So if you combine the fact that he can race 17 Supercross races and then probably hold his own in motocross, that's going to give him the best chance at getting his career number. I think he's proven what he's going to prove in the 250 Supercross class. So anyways, I think he's going to be 450 full-time. That's just speculation though. He hasn't said that himself, at least not that I know of. And then his teammate Max Voland is signed through next season, so he'll be returning with his handbrake. And then one thing that's kind of gone a little bit under the radar is that both Mark Phineas and Alexander Fedorstov both left the team mid-season. Not a whole lot was said other than it was mutually agreed upon. Kind of crazy, especially with Fedorstov. We saw him absolutely kill it in SMX Next, make his pro debut with the team, and he was really holding his own, and then out of nowhere, poof, he's just gone. And then another big question mark that is really not being talked about enough, in my opinion, is Devin Simonson. We saw him sign with the team. He struggled with injuries throughout the beginning of Supercross, and then he finally made his debut with the team, grabbed a couple of 9th place finishes at the end of Supercross, and then even made the Showdown main event at the final round, where he was able to hold his own there as well. And then we just never heard from him again. We haven't heard anything since the end of Supercross. Didn't race motocross in any capacity. No idea what's going on with him. The team also brought Reed Taylor over, so we saw him race like 3 motocross races, and unfortunately he did end up injuring himself at the end of motocross, but he did say that he's working his way back for Supercross next year. So based off of how that was worded, I'm interpreting that as he expects to return for Club MX in 2026 for Supercross. So if we go with Cody Schock in the 450 class, then that would give them 1 rider for each coast so far. Then of course we have Jet Reynolds. This man has just been absolutely riddled with injuries throughout his entire career. he finally was able to return from that broken leg, which seemed to be taking way too long to return from in the first place, and then he immediately re-broke his leg in his first race back. So man, say a prayer for Jet Reynolds' mental health, because honestly, he was one of the highest touted amateurs coming out of the amateurs and going into pros, and it just has not happened for him ever since. Club MX has definitely stuck by his side and given him a great opportunity. I'm not sure if either or both of them want to keep giving it an effort. Hopefully they do, because I think there's a lot of potential on both sides there. But at this point, he's already been with the team for like 2 full seasons and only raced a handful of races. So that's got to be pretty discouraging on both sides. So even with all of those guys, if they all return for the team, there's really nobody premier. Remember, they are coming off of having guys like Phil Nicoletti, Garrett Marchbanks, and Jeremy Martin, or even Enzo Lopes when he was doing really good in Supercross. So while Cody Schock and Max Voland are kind of holding it down, they definitely are going to strive for more people that are running at the front of the pack consistently. So what I'm trying to say is I do expect them to go out and try to get somebody. We'll have to keep our eye on this situation as the season moves forward. Hopefully this helps paint a somewhat clearer picture for you as far as what the teams could look like, where people are likely going. If you made it this far in the video and you enjoyed it, I would really appreciate it if you would help me along in my journey to 10,000 subscribers. But if you're already subscribed, shout out to you. You guys are what make this possible. You likely already know that I do my best to put together the most informative and concise videos, essentially just the type of video that I would like to watch. So thank you for supporting the channel. It really does mean a lot. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video.